When did book smarts not equal real smarts? I work in a hospital with some of the most skilled neurosurgeons on the West Coast. These are individuals who are flown out to Johns Hopkins, Columbia University, or India and China to give presentations to the world's best in the medical field. Yet many of them still type with just their index fingers. They also struggle with spelling. This is a common issue among doctors. It's even more surprising because they are very meticulous, as they should be, when it comes to spelling medical terms and medications properly. Really, you can rattle esophagogastroduodenoscopy off the top of your head, but you use 3 R's and put an O in the word restaurant? Remarkable. One of them couldn't figure out how to open his coffee. You just pull out the stirrer that doubles as a plug to keep your coffee warm and prevent spills. He eventually just gave up and took the lid off. Weekly scheduling issues arise when they want to get a friend's family in next week when they're booked for 6 months out. Sorry, doctor, you're booked out. If you wanted to have complete control over your schedule, you should have gone for more money at a for-profit hospital. That's why your friends can do it at their hospital. This is a public hospital. No one jumps the line because they're richer or have the hookup. Almost half of them don't even know how to really use a computer for anything other than Facebook. Their assistants handle everything. These are usually the over 50 crowd. Most of the younger surgeons don't have this issue. I'm always impressed at how many doctors lead incredibly unhealthy lifestyles. Most of them indulge in unhealthy habits, rarely exercise, and hardly even go to their own doctor. Except for the anesthesiologists, they're the arrogant individuals of the medical field. I swear the pre-anesthesia clinic is just a house of individuals pumping iron and spouting off endless bro-science pseudo-information. These are the individuals that only order lean chicken and brown rice. They probably wouldn't even be at this hospital if there wasn't a free gym downstairs. I dislike working with all of them. They're basically only there to protect the MDs from being sued. We had one orthopedist, highly respected and very talented, park in a handicap spot because he thought that symbol applied to him because he treats all the people in wheelchairs. I'd much rather think he was just being a selfish person. He's actually a nice guy and was feigning being ignorant to get a nice parking spot. We didn't push the issue. The thing is, he has his own reserved spot. Speaking of reserved parking spots, a doctor once parked 2 of his cars in his reserved spot, bumper to bumper. It's not so much big, insensitive stuff, it's constant little things that just remind you that they're really out of touch. We get daily complaints about their bedside manner. They have zero compassion or social tact when it comes to their patients or support staff. It's not mean-spirited, just a little off. I'm stuck politely explaining to the patients that he just saved your life and faces the loss of life every day. Cut him some slack. But really, they're just out of touch. Your family doctor, generalist, or internist can't get away with that stuff, although the typing and spelling are still issues. It's odd to see, considering how incredibly intelligent and talented these people are. Alright, first, I gotta admit that it took me one too many takes to get the pronunciation of esophagogastroduodenoscopy, which, let me save you a Google search, turns out to be a common procedure examining the lining of the esophagus, stomach, and first part of the small intestine. But it only took me one try to say restaurant. But that isn't fair of me, of course. I ain't a doctor, and I certainly don't have that much mentally demanding work on my mind 24/7. So I wouldn't be surprised if there wasn't room for much else on a doctor's mind. Who cares if you can't spell if you can save my life, am I right? Story 2. 15 years ago, I was catching a ride home from work with a really good friend. He was a very sharp guy, both academically and socially, and now he's an Oxford lecturer. At the time, he was driving a beat-up Lada Riva. We found ourselves stuck in Friday evening traffic on the A40 outside of London, a massive traffic jam. My friend had a polystyrene cup full of day-old cold coffee, and for some reason that I will never understand, he rolled down the window of the Lada and tossed the coffee at a white van next to us in the traffic jam, hitting it right on the side door, coffee spilling everywhere. The guy in the van understandably rolled down his window and started shouting at us. Fortunately, the traffic started moving. The guy in the van got behind us and began chasing us. He was right on our tail as the traffic was still crawling. As it started to thin out, I urged my friend to drive as fast as he could to lose the guy in the van. The trouble was, we were in an old Lada Riva. Nonetheless, we pulled into the overtaking lane and floored it, but it wasn't fast enough. The guy in the van swerved into the middle lane and easily kept pace with us. Because we were moving so slowly, he eventually boxed us in due to another car tailgating us. We were all going about 70 miles per hour at this point. With nowhere to go, the guy in the van rolled down his window and began tapping my window, all while still driving. I tried to signal some kind of apology to him, but he kept doing it, looking completely deranged. This terrifying ordeal lasted for about 30 seconds. I was convinced we were all going to cause trouble on the highway. Eventually, the car behind us moved out of the overtaking lane. My friend hit the brakes, swerved in the middle lane behind the van, and we engaged in a game of cat and mouse until we reached our junction and turned off. My friend turned to me and said, "I'm sorry, mate, that was definitely one of the top 10 stupidest things I've ever done." Yeah? Story 3. My spouse's friend picked us up from the airport after a trip. Both my spouse and her friend were nuclear electronics technicians. It was 90 degrees out, and she apologized, saying that the AC didn't work. Now, this was confusing because it was a brand new car she had purchased just a few months ago. I asked if she had it checked out by a repairman, and she said she had, but there was nothing wrong with it, it just didn't work. My spouse was in the front seat expressing how much that sucked. I was in the back and noticed that the AC button didn't have its light on. At a stoplight, I unbuckled, leaned up, and pressed the button. Instantly, it was icy cold in the car. They were both massively confused. I asked why she had never turned it on, and she said she had no idea what that button was for, so she just didn't touch it. I pointed out that it literally said AC on it. It was awkward the rest of the way home. Same girl, different time. She had her wisdom teeth out and was miserable. She posted on Facebook that she'd give anything to eat some soup. A friend commented that they had brought her soup, so what was the problem? She said she couldn't slurp the noodles. I asked why she didn't just cut up the noodles. She said that had never occurred to her. To clarify, she wasn't loopy. This was a few days after the procedure. My spouse once brought me a package of something from the kitchen to open while I was in the living room. Just, one of those well-sealed pouches that are really hard to rip open. I said, "Oh, sure," and went to the kitchen and got out the scissors. She looked like she had short-circuited. These people were extremely smart, but just as dumb as a box of rocks when it came to common sense. I don't know about you guys, but I always want to press any big red button to wait to see what happens. But hey, if you work on nuclear stuff, I'd rather you not have that instinct anyway in the first place. But as they say, the simplest solutions are more likely than not the best solutions. So yeah, scissors, all the time. I keep a pair handy and easily reachable in my kitchen. Story 4. My dad and I used to go fishing together at the cottage when I was a kid. He once brought a folding lawn chair into the canoe with us and waited until we were in the middle of the lake to stand up and try to set it upright so he could sit on it. We capsized, obviously, and had to swim over to a neighbor's beach to get back into the canoe to paddle home. We lost the whole tackle box, which was actually my uncle's, both fishing rods, my dad's watch, keys, and glasses. We all had to drive an hour into town to go to LensCrafters to get him a replacement pair of glasses since he can't see anything without them. We have not gone fishing since then. Another time, also at the cottage, my dad and I went to go get some firewood. We were driving along the cottage road and my dad decided to pull over so we could go into the forest to collect some dry pieces of wood that we would then split back at the cottage. Instead of just parking on the shoulder since it's a really narrow road, he decides to drive the car nose first into the ditch. I was about 8 years old at the time and I remember thinking, how are we going to get back out of the ditch though? And then brushing it off because my dad was a grown-up and he probably knows exactly what he's doing, right? Plus, I don't want to be annoying by questioning him. Well, once we have all of our stuff together and we go to drive home, we're of course stuck in the ditch and can't back out. That's when my dad just quietly went, and then we had to call a tow truck. Something about going up to our cottage makes my dad inexplicably dim. Story 5. When I was in high school, I was friends with this one guy. He was pretty smart and regularly aced his classes. After high school, he pursued a career as an electrical engineer or something. Anyway, we were in the cafeteria one day having lunch when he pulled out a can of soup. That was his lunch. He opened it and looked at the microwave and said, "It's okay if I just put it in like this, right?" Since he hadn't brought a bowl with him. Being a jerk, I immediately replied, "Sure, no problem at all. I do it all the time." And he got excited and rushed off to warm up his soup. He returned a few minutes later, utterly disappointed, and said, "You can't put metal in the microwave." He was really down. It almost ruined his day. He just learned that then and there because another guy at the microwave advised him against it. He managed to borrow a bowl from the kitchen staff and it worked out in the end. But how could he not know that? That's like the first thing you learn. Don't put metal in the microwave. Additionally, he was bothered by the habit of people opening the microwave when it was beeping, indicating it had finished cooking. He thought it was some kind of radiation cooldown warning and believed that everyone who opened the microwave would get mutated because all that radiation was still inside, which doesn't really make sense, but that's what he believed. So either he was clueless or he simply didn't have a microwave at home, which seems crazy to me. Who doesn't have a microwave? Even to this day, I'm still not really sure which it was. No, that is not the first thing you learn. In my experience, not everyone has a microwave, and not everyone knows not to put metal in the microwave. It's not like knowing to not put a metal utensil into an outlet barehanded. Story 6. I've been told that I'm a clever man by people, but the other day I was pouring myself a cup of Erin Brew, a Scottish soft drink, so I thought it took me a moment to realize I was pouring it into a plate. One time my sister invited me over for dinner, but she asked me to get a colander so she could make pasta. So I went to the shop and couldn't find any. I phoned her and asked which aisle I could find them on. She answered, to which I said, "I'm already there. I can't see any colanders, just a bunch of metal sieves." I had no idea what a colander was. And one time when I was younger, my mom asked me to pick up some food while out shopping. But the milk bottle was pierced and leaking, so she told me to put the milk in a bowl. I filled the bowl with milk, but I still had the rest of the bottle left, so I grabbed another bowl and filled that up. Same thing again, so I grabbed a few cups and filled them all with milk. At which point, my mom came into the kitchen to find lots of bowls and cups filled with milk. She asked me what I was doing. "You told me to put the milk in the bowl, but there was too much, so I poured the rest into cups," I said. "No," she replied. "I said to put the bottle of milk over a bowl so it'll leak into the bowl." Oh, whoops. Story 7. The old low wisdom, high intelligence build. How it makes me chuckle. I've collected a few hundred stories from various people and places, myself included, but there are a few that stick out to me. A guy I knew who was doing an engineering degree was told by a housemate not to be too loud for one night as some family members were staying over. They were on a journey back home after a funeral and wanted to stop in to see the housemate. The housemate asked the guy to keep it down or to go out by 12 so the family could at least get some sleep before having to leave at 7 a.m. The guy in question proceeded to drink, play grunge and rock music until 1, and sing loudly to all the music while the two family members were just sitting there. That was pretty foolish. A girl I knew who was wickedly smart and well-educated once asked where Jamaica was in Africa. That one gets me all the time. And my mother does this thing, despite being incredibly smart and well-read, where whenever she cleans up a room, she will not return all the things to the cupboards where they belong, but will put them in different places. The real kicker is that she was the one who put the things in those cupboards specifically and told us all where they were supposed to be. You can tell when she's clean because you can't find the remote control anymore. I love her dearly. Hold on, wait a minute. Jamaica isn't in Africa? TIL. Nah, I'm just kidding. I guess being smart doesn't mean you're immune to dumb decisions or being absent-minded. Lesson learned for sure. And hey, if you're enjoying the irony of these stories, please do hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. It super duper does help me out. And I got a bunch of other content coming your way too, so make sure you stick around for those. Story 8. This is a woman who has climbed the ranks in her company by reviving unproductive stores in her chain and making them profitable. When she speaks, people pay attention. She became a young single mom, yet she still managed to attend college and work full-time. She's an active member of the PTA and has advocated for numerous causes in her daughter's school district. In short, she is a well-educated woman who knows how to accomplish tasks effectively. In her private life, not so successful. She was unfaithful to her first husband with his best friend and couldn't grasp why he became upset. She cheated on her second husband with one of his employees, and again with her third husband, do you notice a pattern, with a much younger man, then was surprised when he betrayed her with a younger woman. She openly discusses her relationships and unfaithfulness as casually as you or I would talk about our lunch, and she wonders why people, rightfully, view her negatively and incorrectly, say she's using relationships to advance her career. She just genuinely fails to understand that she should keep both her actions and her words in check. Story 9. My wife is without a doubt one of the quickest and wittiest people I've ever met. I enjoy a challenge. Unintelligent individuals don't interest me. She is certainly my intellectual superior, but I caught her off guard twice while she was driving and not fully focused. The first instance was when we passed by a farmer's field full of yellow flowers. and she asked what they were. I told her they were mustard seeds, to which she skeptically responded, "That doesn't sound right." I chuckled and said, "Yeah, I'm just joking. They're actually ketchup seeds. They dye them red with tomatoes later." She replied, "Oh, I never knew that." The second time, we were driving after camping on Manitoulin Island in northern Ontario, Canada. As we turned a corner, water appeared right beside the road on our left. She remarked, "Oh, I didn't expect there to be water on this side of the road." To which I quipped, "It's an island. There's water on all sides." In her defense, she was looking at an inland lake, not the larger body of water surrounding the island. Being smug, I bring up these two instances any chance I get. Well, in his wife's defense, and for all we know, the husband could be a very persuasive sounding speaker. Also, if I were driving, I'd be pretty gullible too while I'm focused on the road. Squirrel! Story 10. I had a friend in high school who was an absolute technical wizard, a prodigy basically, top-level math and science, went on to attend MIT, and has since worked a variety of mechanical engineering jobs that I, a left-brained artsy type, can't even begin to comprehend. One weekend, we were out on his property. His family lived on a huge stretch of land out in the sticks, running around shooting each other with airsoft, like you do. As it got dark, he got in his car and drove it down to where we were, turned off the engine, and left the headlights on to illuminate where we were. "Won't that drain the battery?" I asked. "Nah, it'll be fine," he said. So we kept running around, and maybe half an hour later, the headlights went out. He runs back up and tries to turn the car on, but it won't start. The battery is dead. "That doesn't make any sense," he said. "I've driven on the freeway for hours with my lights on, and this has never happened." "Yeah," I said, "because when your car's engine is running, it charges the battery." After a second, he says, "Oh." We got his dad to jump the car, and he went right on being a genius ever after. Story 11. Not seen directly, but heard the professor tell these two stories. This man is an expert with nanomaterials and just an all-around physics legend, and yet, first, the professor began watching karate movies and became a fan. Soon, he began to wonder if he could reproduce some of the feats he had been seeing various martial artists perform on film. "I am a physicist," he said. "I can do this." So he got a stack of a few cinder blocks and tried to break them with a karate chop. You already know how well that went down. Second, once his home's water heater stopped heating water. "I am a physicist," he said. "I can do this." After all, he reasoned the water heater was just a really big resistor submerged in a tank of water with some plumbing attached to it all. Why not repair it himself? The basement cleanup cost him a few $1,000s plus the cost of a new water heater and professional installation. Anyway, as a redeeming quality, this professor invites all students in his classes to a giant cookout each semester where he grills some of the best burgers you will ever have. Story 12. I was going to bake cookies for my 20th year high school reunion, but I encountered a problem. I explained this problem to my fiance. Me. I was going to make cookies for my reunion, but it ended up that I couldn't. Him. Why? Me. Well, your mom gave me that box of cookie cutters that has over 100 shapes, and I was going to make cookies in the 9 and 5 shapes for the class of 1995, but it didn't come with a number 9. It has 1 through 8, but no 9. At this point, he just stared at me because he thought I had come to a realization on my own, which I hadn't. Me. What? Him. You just have to turn the number 6 upside down and it's a 9. I looked at him blankly. Him. The number 6 upside down is the number 9. You did realize that, didn't you? He cracked up when he figured out that I had never realized this. I have a PhD. Story 13. I'll just say I'm an intelligent person with severe social awkwardness and a fair amount of social anxiety. I think one of my worst moments was at my best friend's funeral. The circumstances were awful. So I arrived a bit late to his memorial, which was at a park. I also decided to ride my motorcycle since we both love bikes. I showed up not only late and noisy, but apparently while a preacher was offering a prayer and the 50 or so people there had their heads bowed. Unfortunately, this was an outdoor park and the parking was quite near the praying, so yeah. After that, I waited until they were done praying to walk up and speak with his mom. She hugged me, started crying, and said, "You were his best friend. Thank you so much for coming." To which I responded, "No, thank you for coming." She let it slide or didn't notice, and I continued to make a fool of myself at my best friend's memorial. Story 14. One of my mom's best friends growing up had a brother who was absolutely brilliant. This is a guy who graduated at the top of his class, got a perfect score on the SAT, and went to and graduated from Harvard. Sometime into his adult life, he decided to go to the grocery store a few blocks away. Ordinarily, he walks, but he decided to drive this particular time. He went to the store, got his stuff, and proceeded to walk home. The next morning, he went to go into his car, only to discover that it was missing from his driveway, so he filed a police report. A few days went by, and he had to go to the grocery store again. He walked like he normally does and found his car exactly where he left it a few days before. This is a Harvard graduate. So there you have it. It's a good reminder that everyone makes mistakes, no matter how many textbooks they've read. Now, if you're down for more laughs at the expense of the overachievers, check out the next video. What's a real-life example of having a PhD and still being an idiot? Story 2 can't even get a clue. I'll see you there, and thank you for watching this one.